Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on First Post. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei accuses the United States and Israel of working together to topple Bashar al-Assad's government in Syria. This as Syrian rebels announce Mohammed al-Bashir as the country's new leader. The U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin visits Japan and interacts with American troops in Tokyo. This as China increases its military activity in the region, particularly around Taiwan. Protests against femicide turn violent in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. The police officials fired tear gas at demonstrators as hundreds march toward the parliament. And France begins withdrawing its military from Chad after 2 Mirage 2000 fighter jets were flown out. This after Chad's military junta ordered France to remove its 1,000-strong troop contingent from the West African country. And India's National Weather Department issues a cold wave alert for the northern part of the country. This as temperatures in the capital, New Delhi, drop below 5 degrees Celsius, with the mercury expected to drop even further in the next 48 hours. Hello and welcome. We begin with tensions in the Horn of Africa. Somalia's President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed has arrived in Turkey for talks with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The Somali leader will take part in the third round of talks aimed at diffusing tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has also been invited by Turkey. If the Ethiopian leader accepts the invite and attends the talks, then it would be the first time that the Somali and Ethiopian leaders meet since Addis Ababa announced plans to get access to a port in Somalia's breakaway region, Somaliland. Now, relations between Somalia and Ethiopia have soured dramatically since January, when Addis Ababa signed a deal with Somaliland to get access to the Berbera port, giving landlocked Ethiopia access to the seas. In return, Somaliland says that Ethiopia agreed to give the breakaway region international recognition. Tensions have escalated between the two East African nations since then, drawing global attention. The spat has pushed Somalia closer to Egypt, and Cairo already had frosty relations with Ethiopia over the construction of a major dam on the River Nile, which would impact the flow of the river going to Egypt. In September, Egypt sent a ship loaded with weapons to Somalia, as tensions between Mogadishu and Addis Ababa escalated to near warlike levels. However, one nation that has played a mediator's role throughout has been Turkey. Turkey has good relations with both Ethiopia and Somalia. Ankara has promised long-term investment in the Horn of Africa and sees both Ethiopia and Somalia as vital partners. Turkey has increased its interactions with Ethiopia in recent years. Erdogan has called the bilateral relation an important step toward garnering support for the Palestinian cause. Meanwhile, Turkey has made major inroads into Ethiopia's neighbor. Ankara has signed an oil exploration deal with Mogadishu and even deployed a military research ship to Somalia in October. Turkey has played a proactive role in diffusing tensions in the Horn of Africa. Erdogan has already mediated 2 rounds of talks between Somalia and Ethiopia. The first was in July, where the Somaliland dispute prevented an agreement. Then in August, Turkey again failed to bring consensus on Somaliland. The talks scheduled for September were indefinitely postponed after the Somali President Sheikh Mohammed refused to meet with Ethiopia's Prime Minister Ahmed. Now, in December, Turkey is hosting the 2 nations in Ankara, hoping to ease tensions between Addis Ababa and Mogadishu. According to reports, Somalia's president has set a precondition for bilateral meetings with his Ethiopian counterpart, which is that Ethiopia will have to cancel its agreement with Somaliland if it intends on sitting at a discussion table with its neighbour. Now, Turkey is not the only nation trying to push for a diplomatic resolution. The presidents of Djibouti and Mauritania have also tried but failed. Kenyan President William Ruto and Uganda's leader Yoweri Museveni have also tried to mediate talks between Ethiopia and Somalia but have not been successful. Turkey is now hopeful that it will be able to convince the 2 countries to ease tensions and to resume diplomacy. But can Erdogan play peacemaker in Africa? Now, for more on this, we have with us Mohammed Abdirahman, a political expert on the Horn of Africa, live from Somaliland. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Now, how significant is Turkey's role as a mediator in this ongoing dispute between Somalia and Ethiopia over the port access? And what might this mean for Ankara's influence in the Horn of Africa region?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks for categorically mentioning the sequence of events. In regard to Turkey, we need to understand that even in this current meeting that's going to happen, it may have not come from the motives of both Ethiopia or Somalia or even Turkey. Turkey is offering good offices, but we understand that it's the outgoing United States administration under Biden and Blinken who have been trying to see a deal being negotiated before they leave office. So that has been the case. Both Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia and Hassan Sheikh Mohammed of Somalia seen their relations strained, and that has been going on for the last year. Now we are at the end of the year in December, and this deal has. So what's happening and what's been discussed is the aftermath, the consequences of the MOU. What is really been important for this case is that Somalia puts on the table if Ethiopia can withdraw from the MOU with Somalia. And on the other hand, Ethiopia is intent and keen on seeing if the Egyptian troops that have been brought to Somalia or weaponry that has been smuggled into Somalia, as well as Ethiopia's possibility of becoming a troop contributing country in the future of ATMIS. These have been the negotiations, and we understand that Turkey is also having oil exploration interests in Somalia, as well as economic ties with Ethiopia. So
Yes.
Turkey is trying to maintain if it can balance these relations between the 2 countries.
Yes.
But we understand it's something much deeper, and it's because of we have to understand why the MOU was not being implemented, and that was the pressure from the Biden administration. We have to understand that.
Right. And Mohammed, what are the potential economic and geopolitical implications for Somalia and Ethiopia if a resolution is reached regarding Ethiopia's access to Somali ports?
So we understand that both Ethiopia, as well as many countries in the region, it's not issue around providing access to ports, as sometimes people confuse. Ethiopia is looking for a sovereign right in the Red Sea, and that's what is called a permanent presence or a reliable presence in many senses. And what the MOU was offering was that Somaliland leases Ethiopia for around 50 years, a naval base, and not a commercial port. Remember that both Ethiopia and Somaliland have had previous agreements on port agreements, especially on the port of Berbera. So while it's important to acknowledge that trade integration and that Ethiopia's market, which is more than 120 million and beyond, is so much beneficial to Somaliland and any other port in the Horn of Africa, the significance of the issue is not that. The significance of the issue is that Ethiopia getting access to a naval base, which of course been contested highly, and Ethiopia offering Somaliland in return for a diplomatic recognition, which has also angered Somalia. And that's why the talks failed in the previous rounds. And I don't expect in this new round in Turkey to come up with new formalities or new times of engagement between Somalia and Ethiopia. It will be a problem not to take this opportunity, but of course, what we see is that neither side is backing down. Somalia has just accused Ethiopia of arming functions and federal member states, while Ethiopia has been trying to push that it is just maintaining to defend its country inside Somalia. So the tensions are high, the stakes are high, and neither part is backing down. The economic part that people talk about is something that has been mentioned quite often. And then the other point that we want to see is that the Horn of Africa, known for geopolitical contestation, is at its worst scenario, at its worst case, where we have conflicts in Sudan, where we have conflicts in Somalia, where we have even internal conflicts in Ethiopia. And then many countries like Djibouti and Ethiopia are not on good terms, or Djibouti and Eritrea are not on good terms.
Yes. Unfortunately, we have lost our guest, but we will be moving on to our next story. Now, Sudan witnesses one of its deadliest days as the fighting between the country's warring military forces intensifies. In northern Darfur, an alleged army airstrike killed more than 100 people on the 9th of December. The air attack also left hundreds of people injured. The victims included both women and children. Now, according to pro-democracy lawyers group, the airstrikes hit a weekly market in Kabia town, where shoppers had gathered from nearby villages, and reports suggest that more than 8 barrel bombs devastated the market. Now, Kabia town is 180 kilometers to the west of Al Fashir, the capital of North Darfur, which has been under siege by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, since May of this year. The lawyers group described the attack as a horrendous massacre committed by the army. However, the Sudanese army has denied all accusations. It has instead accused the political parties backed by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces of spreading lies. The army said it would continue to exercise its legitimate right to defend the country. Now, a day after the airstrikes in Darfur, the RSF allegedly fired artillery in a part of Omdurman city controlled by the Sudanese army. Reports say the attack in Khartoum state killed at least 20 people, while the state government said the attack claimed 65 lives and wounded hundreds. According to the state governor, the shelling also hit a passenger bus, killing all 22 people on board. The Khartoum governor inspected the site after the attack.
This targeting, instead of being directed at our heroes on the front lines, is aimed at these innocent civilians in their everyday lives, whether on public transportation or in markets. This is an attack on the people, while wars should be fought on battlefields and with regular forces.
Human rights activists believe that the two attacks killed at least 127 people in 2 days. The deceased mostly included civilians. This as the 20-month-old war between the army and the RSF turns increasingly bloody. The conflict, which started in April of 2023, has killed thousands of people and has displaced more than 12 million citizens, triggering the worst humanitarian crisis in recent history. Both warring sides continue to fight to claim control over Sudanese territories. Now, the army currently controls parts of the capital, Khartoum, and areas in the country's north and east, while the RSF has seized nearly the entire western region of Darfur. It also claims control over the Khartoum region, the southern Kordofan region, and much of central Sudan. Now, the recent attacks show that neither the Sudanese army nor the RSF are willing to negotiate as the world continues to turn a blind eye to the war in Africa. Moving to Sudan's neighbour, South Sudan, the country's president, Salva Kiir, has fired South Sudan's military chief, the police chief, and the central bank governor. The senior government officials were sacked late on Monday night, and the president has refused to give an explanation behind the move. Now, President Kiir has now appointed Paul Nangmajak as the new army chief after replacing General Santino Woe. According to a Reuters report, the shakeup in the higher ranks of the South Sudanese military comes after alleged disquiet within the army ranks. The reports say that several soldiers have not been paid salaries for over a year, which has led to increased anti-president sentiments in the barracks. South Sudan has been seeing internal unrest since last year, when the president's office claimed that there was a coup plot against him in November of 2023. However, the South Sudanese army and the police denied the coup reports, despite having deployed large amounts of troops in the capital. The sacking of the army chief and the police chief comes just about a year after the tensions among the South Sudanese leadership began. A shakeup has been ongoing in South Sudan at the highest level. It all started in early October this year. President Kiir dismissed Akol Kirkuk, the National Security Service head, who had held the position since South Sudan gained independence in 2011. Then in November, President Kiir ordered the arrest of the former head of intelligence, which led to an eruption of gunfire in the capital city of Juba. And now in December, President Kiir has fired the army chief and the police chief. The central bank governor has also been charged. And Johnny Damien has been appointed by President Kiir after firing him from the same position back in 2023. However, the abrupt changes to leadership have not been met without resistance. The arrest of the former head of intelligence in November saw short and brief clashes on the streets of Juba. The fighting erupted between the intelligence chiefs, loyalists, and the People's Defense Forces, which is an organization militia of the government. And the United Nations peacekeeping forces had to be called in on an emergency basis to quell the gunfire between the two sides.
Try our best. We go to some checkposts, try our best not to aggravate the situation, try our best not to get into a conflict situation with the people in the checkpost. However, but then ultimately what suffers is our ability to reach the location where, if we reach, we will save lives of South Sudanese citizens. That saving of lives is averted by these access denials.
The United Peacekeeping Forces did manage to control the situation. However, they have accused the South Sudanese government of deliberately preventing the peacekeeping forces from patrolling in certain areas of Juba.
It may look that the numbers are insignificant, but these are the 15 patrols which are in places of imminent clashes. These are the places we feel that the protection of civilians' concern is at most. So in these places, if we are not able to go, then obviously without showing our presence, we obviously cannot prevent escalation of the conflict. So these access denials, though only 15 patrols in a month, maybe only 2 to 3% of our patrols overall, but they can be crippling in our implementation of the protection of civilians mandate. We request the government that one of the surest ways of ensuring that we collectively fulfill the protection of civilians mandate is by ensuring unfettered access to UNMISS. We have never ever gone against the interest of peace in South Sudan, and there is no reason to feel that UNMISS going anywhere will create any difficulty for the government or for the peace agreement. It will actually promote our efforts in this regard.
Abrupt changes in the government and growing unrest in the country put President Kiir on the back foot. The country's economy has been on a decline after the internal fighting erupted in 2013. Though South Sudan signed a peace deal with the warring communities in 2018, tensions between the rival ethnic groups persist, with South Sudan going to polls in 2026. President Kiir is racing against the clock to improve the country's security and economy. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. For our next story, we shift our focus to the Sahara Desert in Libya, where the country's small forest cover is diminishing amid a crippling drought that has been ongoing for nearly a decade. As the nation faces damaging effects of climate change, a local environmental group has launched a campaign to plant tens of thousands of trees across the country. We bring you more details about the ongoing reforestation efforts in Libya.
Libya, a North African country that's almost entirely covered by the Sahara Desert. Only a small area hosts forest, and this is the green lifeline for the nation. This includes the area near the coastal city of Homs, which hosts Al Negaza Forest, located 100 kilometers east of the capital, Tripoli. However, the trees and green cover in this area have been declining in recent years. Environmentalists have blamed the increasing water shortage amid crippling droughts.
Today from inside the forest, this is Al Negaza Forest or Al Markab Forest. In these areas, trees have died due to the drought occurring within these forests due to the lack of water and the drought phase that these forests went through in past years. Several trees died, and now we are trying to replace the dead trees with new ones.
For years, a local environment group in Libya has been trying to address the problem. It has been running an annual campaign to plant trees in various areas across the country. This year, the group targeted the Homs area, where trees have dried up due to severe drought. This marks their fifth attempt to restore the area's natural balance amid rapidly diminishing green cover.
This area has experienced drought, and the trees have dried up. We are trying as much as possible to compensate through reforestation, and we have already planted trees in this area. This campaign is perhaps the fifth or sixth one. It's the fifth, and we are trying to change the environment and climate as much as possible. If each person starts with their area or region with what they can do, we will reach better results, God willing.
Several volunteers have joined the efforts to increase Libya's forest cover. Families and school children are participating in these campaigns, digging holes and planting seedlings.
Of course, we must care for trees and teach our children how to care for and preserve them. Our ancestors planted trees here, and we are also planting for our children and future generations. Trees represent growth and life. They give us oxygen, they give us nature, they protect us from the current global warming. We advise people to take care of trees, plant them, and maintain them.
Despite continuous efforts, the campaign has met with some challenges. The biggest of them is Libya's acute water scarcity. According to the United Nations, Libya's annual precipitation in coastal areas has fallen from 400 millimeters in 2019 to 200 millimeters in 2024, while the water demand is now higher than what's available. Apart from water challenges, Libya is also exposed to other damaging effects of climate change. These include soaring temperatures, rising sea levels, extended droughts, and sand and dust storms of increasing frequency. Amidst these problems, the local environmentalists have realized the importance of trees to fight climate change. As the desert nation suffers drought, increased heat, and power outages, a renewed campaign for reforestation brings in new hope for the North African country to save itself from future climatic disasters.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.